Breaking news: climate change and Russia's war on Ukraine are both topics that Ukrainian diplomats are negotiating at the COP28 conference in Dubai. Located in the UAE capital of Dubai, the United Arab Emirates has witnessed a surge in its business ties to Moscow despite Western sanctions, while Ukrainian diplomats participate in negotiations at the United Nations COP28 climate talks. Meanwhile, Russia's war on the country looms in the background. On Monday, Ukrainian officials boasted about a wind farm expansion in the Mykolaiv region that would cost €450 million, $489 million. They emphasized how the turbines would be spaced far enough apart to withstand a missile strike from Russia. As snowstorms engulf the nation, they denounced Moscow's persistent assaults on its energy infrastructure. Protesters have refrained from mentioning Israel in their demonstrations against the Israeli government's ground offensive and airstrikes on the Gaza Strip and Hamas, but an American diplomat at the event vehemently condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources Jeffrey R. Pyatt told the Associated Press that the war in Ukraine, specifically Putin's invasion, poses a significant threat to the international system that the U.S. and its allies and partners are working to establish. The rule of the jungle is being imposed upon us by Putin. He must be vanquished. There was no immediate response from the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C., or Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. At the COP28 summit, the Ukrainian pavilion is a symbol of the ongoing conflict. The destruction of towns and villages in June caused by the overflow of the Kakhovka Dam, the biggest reservoir in the nation, and the subsequent collapse of the dam is physically represented by a brick roof from the war-torn Kherson region. Devastating floods, at-risk crops in the world's breadbasket, endangered drinking water supplies for thousands, and an environmental disaster ensued as a result of the dam's destruction. Russia is the one Ukraine holds responsible for the dam's collapse because it had the ability, incentive, and chance to do so. Putin himself admitted that the dam gave cover for Russia's retreating forces and thwarted Ukraine's counteroffensive this summer, but Russia has used a number of accusations to blame Ukraine for the dam's collapse. DTEK, a private Ukrainian energy producer, and Vestas, a Danish firm, signed an MOU at Monday's Pavilion event to expand Tech's wind farm project in Mykolaiv. According to Maxim Timchenko, CEO of DTEK, the first phase was constructed for €200 million, $217 million, during the war, with crews spending approximately one-third of their time in bomb shelters. While doing their jobs, they see missiles soaring above them, according to Timchenko. This accomplishment fills us with pride for that reason. Plus, it boosts our confidence to build the second phase and finish the project. We are prepared to battle. Timchenko noted that the additional €450 million in funding for the project came from banks that had government guarantees and war risk insurance. He also praised Denmark for its part in securing the financing. In the midst of ongoing hostilities, Russia maintains control of Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the largest such facility in Europe, and plans to expand the energy grid. As winter approaches, power is also in jeopardy. After launching more than 1,200 missiles and drones at power plants, generating stations, and power lines in Ukraine last winter, the country's electrical infrastructure was nearly completely destroyed. During the coldest months, hours without electricity and water were forced upon the people, a phenomenon that Ukrainian officials referred to as energy terror. While Ukraine claims to have fixed the damage over the summer, concerns about Russian attacks on its grid have been rekindled by the biggest wave of attacks ever last month, which included drones supplied by Iran. Despite improvements in air defense around Kiev and other areas, frontline cities in eastern and southern Ukraine are still particularly at risk. Putin has made energy one of his weapons, stated Pyatt, a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. He accomplished that by targeting civilian energy infrastructure with missile and drone attacks. In an effort to undermine Europe's determination to back the Ukrainians, he has achieved this by cutting off gas pipelines. So we have recognized from day one that for Vladimir Putin, energy is just about as much a part of his war strategy as are his tanks and his missiles. This report was contributed to by Hanna Ararova of the Associated Press in Kiev, Ukraine. Several private foundations support the climate and environmental coverage of the Associated Press. To learn more about AP's environmental program, click here. Any and all content is the exclusive responsibility of the AP. Following Friday night's ruling by Russia's Supreme Court labeling all gay rights groups as extremist, police started searching gay bars and clubs. Some other Russian venues that welcome the LGBTQ community have started to close their doors as a result of the raids, according to the Associated Press. Police in Moscow's capital city searched and photographed customers' identification as they raided a nightclub, a men-only sauna, and an LGBTQ+ bar. The police raids were justified by claiming drugs were to blame, a tactic often used by anti-LGBTQ+ nations to target queer individuals and spaces. According to Putin's advisor, the United States is indoctrinating homosexual Ukrainians to become elite soldiers. He predicted that the Ukrainian military would develop a zombified and unified through gay sex, along with cult members ready to sacrifice themselves mentality. A number of LGBTQ+ venues, including St. Petersburg's Central Station, have started to close their doors in response to the recent raids and the court ruling. The verdict effectively gives the Russian government carte blanche to crack down on any group that stands up for LGBTQ+ rights. The decision is the most recent development in Russia's long-running campaign of persecution against the LGBTQ+ community. As a result of this crackdown, the semi-autonomous Chechen region has been able to abduct, detain, torture, and murder gay men for an extended period of time. Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the United States and Western nations of attempting to impose gender perversions on Russian schoolchildren in a speech he gave in October 2022. He continues to invade Ukraine while citing LGBTQ+ rights as an excuse. Throughout his nearly 12-year presidency, he has blamed the LGBTQ+ community and its supporters for the deterioration of social conditions in his nation. In June 2013, Putin implemented a law that outlawed what is commonly referred to as gay propaganda in Russia. The stated goal of the law was to protect children from what the law calls propaganda of non-traditional sexual relationships. Russians of all ages are now subject to the new regulations, not only children. In addition to dividing families, harassing educators, and punishing men for consensual sexual encounters, the law has primarily been utilized to censor LGBTQ+ activist groups, events, websites, and media. Civil rights activists from all over the globe, along with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child and human rights organizations Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have all strongly denounced it. The country's ban on LGBTQ+ propaganda was expanded in a law that Putin signed in December 2012. By prohibiting any action or the spreading of any information that is considered an attempt to promote homosexuality in public, online, or in films, books, or advertising, the signed law essentially bans all public expression of LGBTQ+ life in Russia. According to Reuters, right-wing politicians and anti-LGBTQ+ religious leaders in the United States have lauded Putin for his anti-LGBTQ+ policies. Similarly, right-wing politicians, so-called parents' rights groups, and media figures have been pushing to restrict LGBTQ+ content, healthcare that affirms gender identity, and drag shows from American children on the basis of false accusations that they sexualize and groom them. Most of the people in the United States would support Russia's anti-LGBTQ+ laws, according to Catholic Family and Human Rights Institute, CFAM, President Austin Ruse, 2013. Also endorsing Russia's anti-queer legislation in 2014 was anti-LGBTQ+ evangelical Franklin Graham. An American think tank claims that the Kremlin is worried about the impact of the conflict on public opinion. According to the Independent Chronicle survey, the number of Russians who firmly support the invasion has nearly doubled since February 2023. For a long time, the pro-peace camp outnumbered the pro-war camp, and an increasing number of pro-peace camp members wanted the war to end. In a statement on the results, the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, said that the Kremlin is probabilmente preoccupado about how the shift in Russian popular support towards the war could affect the 2024 presidential elections. According to the think tank, Vladimir Putin will instead focus on the presunta stabilidad interna de la Russia y sul critiche al occidente, in vez de concentrarse sulla guerra when launching his redemption campaign. It is notoriously difficult to conduct surveys in authoritarian states like Russia. The fact that the Kremlin sends critics to war and spends millions on pro-conflict propaganda means that surveys may not reflect reality. Chronicles, which was founded by opposition Russian politician Alexei Minialo, maintains that its surveys nevertheless provide an accurate portrait of public opinion. Through a telephone survey conducted between October 17 and 22, the research team sent out a series of questions to 1,199 adults across Russia, additional 170,000 soldiers from Russia. Russian offensive in eastern Ukraine. From 22% in February 2023 to 12% in October, the number of war supporters, or those who want the invasion to continue until they have achieved their goals, has decreased. Chronicles survey results show that 40% of Russians are in favor of pulling troops out of Ukraine even before military objectives are reached. This number remains constant throughout 2023. On the other hand, 33% of Russians are against pulling troops out of Ukraine and say they want the war to continue, even though this number has been steadily declining from 47% in February to 39% in July.